All right, so if you remember back to our first unit, and we talked about thesis statements in general, I said that different types of paper require different types of thesis statements. And that's true. And today or this week, I want to kind of talk to you guys about writing a thesis statement for your literary analysis. So, the first thing when kind of figuring out what my thesis statement or what your thesis statement is going to be, the first thing that you want to think about is your purpose. Remember your purpose because that is going to dictate. Ooh, typo. That's going to dictate your direction and the type of thesis that you put together. So your purpose for your literary analysis is to closely examine our novel, and then there were none, to understand its messages, interpret its meanings, and appreciate techniques or understand the historical or social context. So, in other words, you're writing an analysis, you're looking closely at the novel to come up with some sort of interpretation of meaning, what something means, or what Agatha Christie is saying through various elements in this novel. So, remember that kind of concept of what a solid thesis is. What's a thesis statement? Well, the thesis statement is the backbone of your paper. It's your argument. It's your central kind of idea that you're going to develop through the body of your essay. And a solid, sexy thesis statement needs three parts. And I don't mean like that cliched. This paper will discuss X, Y, and Z kind of parts. I'm talking about the parts that are the topic, your stance, and your so what. If you don't have these three things in your thesis statement, you probably won't have kind of a good one, one on which you can build your analysis. So a thesis statement for your literary analysis is going to be a statement that provides the subject and overall interpretation. And it has to relate to the theme of the work and suggest how this theme is revealed by the author. The other thing that you want to remember is that it's got to be arguable. It's got to be up for debate. It shouldn't be something super obvious. For example, Agatha Christie uses imagery in her novel. Well, that's not really up for debate because it's true, right? You want to be more specific and more detailed in your thesis statement. So, your thesis statement should always have a point. There is a point to your analysis, and that should be found, or that should be stated in your thesis. It should be specific, not just a general comment, but clearly communicate your essay's main ideas. And I gave you the example that Christie uses imagery in her novel. Well, that is not specific, it's general. So instead of saying she uses imagery, another example would be she uses weather imagery, right? Because she does, to indicate the various moods and changes within the characters. That's something that's more specific and it's arguable. You want to avoid something like this work is positive in some ways but negative in many others. That does not a thesis statement make because it's not specific. It doesn't communicate any sort of theme, any sort of point of analysis, and it doesn't set you up for a strong, solid essay. Your thesis statement then should demonstrate some new understanding of the literary work. And what do I mean by new understanding? I just mean I want to know what your interpretation is. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel, but I am asking for you to kind of develop your own understanding and your own interpretation of the work, because the way, what I see in the text may not be the same things that you see as you're reading. And you want to state this new understanding, this interpretation, in the form of an assertion. An assertion is an interpretation about a general subject like life, relationships, gender, or class that you think the author is making through some element, some literary element, because remember, it's a literary analysis, like character, setting, motif, symbol, from some element of the work. An assertion is, I want to say this really quickly, authoritative in tone, right? It's authoritative. It gives me, you're not like, well, it could mean X, Y, or Z. It might mean blank. No, it should be an assertion. It should be authoritative, and not caveated by I believe or I think, type of things, or stated in this declarative, this paper will discuss, whether in Agatha Christie's novel. That's not an assertion. That's not a thesis statement. So a sexy thesis statement should make the reader say, wow, really? Prove it. It answers the what question. What is the argument? And it gives the reader a clue to the why question. Why is this argument important? Why is this message important? Why does it matter? So it answers that so what question. So I want you guys to look really quickly at this thesis statement. Christie's novel, And Then There Were None, is a great mystery novel. Is this a good thesis statement based on what we've just talked about? Well, it's good in that it says the author's name and it gives the title of the work. But this concept that it is a great mystery novel, is that a strong kind of claim? Well, I would argue that it is not, because it's not up for debate. It is a great mystery novel, but it's also weak for another other variety of reasons. That thesis statement. All right, I wanted to make sure that we could look at it and talk about it at the same time. Okay, so this thesis statement is weak because it sets you up for a summary rather than an analysis. This kind of gives me the indication that you're just going to tell me what the story is about. And a literary analysis is asking you to analyze and not summarize. The question or the prompt asks you to pick a specific aspect of the novel or a literary element, and there's no literary element in this thesis statement. And when you pick an aspect of the novel, I'm asking you to pick something like language, symbolism, setting, one of those literary elements that we talked about when beginning this unit. So this is not a great thesis statement. So to get a great thesis statement, you want to start by looking at the larger message or the theme. And the theme, remember, it's not this kind of moralizing lesson that, oh, well, you shouldn't go to islands that you don't know who they're owned by, or something like that, something cliched, or be careful of who you trust type of thing. A theme is more of the main idea or underlying meaning of the work. What is the author, what does Agatha Christie want us to understand about some subject, like gender roles, class status, human nature? And so I've outlined here a number of themes that Agatha Christie uses in the novel. We have this kind of idea of gender roles, of social class, this idea of confinement or isolation, justice, injustice, reputation versus appearance, lies, deceit, and truth. Because remember, Vera's name means truth. This concept of sanity or insanity, guilt, responsibility, and there are various different ways you can interpret those words. Death, dehumanization or civilization, order versus chaos, and there's so many more themes, but these are just a number of them that really are emphasized. Like, for example, self-preservation, survival of the fittest, those kinds of concepts that we've talked about through our discussions of the novel. So you want to pick a theme that you think is the most apparent, or the one that you feel the one that you want to write about the most. So where do we start? Once we've picked our theme, right? Agatha Christie is making a point about death. Okay, because this novel, and I feel like when I'm making all of those PowerPoints and putting all these pictures of all of the various victims, I feel very morbid, but she is making a point about death. Okay, the point she is making is that it is, what is she saying about death? That it is unavoidable, that it is unifying in some ways, because while all of these people come from very different places, they are all united in the fact that they are going to die. So death is this unifying thing. It is an equalizing thing. So you want to think about what she's saying about some general subject and what that specific point is, and then refine it into an arguable claim. So the point she's making, what the point is, well, how does she make that point? So there's a formula, and at the risk of sounding like a math class again, your thesis statement should have these various different kind of elements that will help give you the topic, your stance, and your so what. Okay, you have to have the title of the work, some sort of analysis verb that ties to a theme. So what does the author do or say? How this literary element, how does the author do this? So how does the author do that, and why? What is the author's point? What is the author's message? So, for example, I have here in and then there were none. Christie disrupts class stereotypes. By placing characters of various social classes on the island, she suggests that people should not be defined by their station, but by their actions. So here I have my title of the work. What does the author do? What's my analysis verb? Well, she disrupts class stereotypes. So there's my verb and my theme. She disrupts class stereotypes. Well, how does she do that? Well, you could say that she does that in a variety of different ways. You could say that she does that through the setting of the island. But I have here that my element, my chosen element is that she does that through the characters, and by placing them on the island. And what is my conclusion? Why does that matter? What's my overall point? People should not be defined by their station, but by their actions. That's the point, my overall conclusion. And my entire paper is going to discuss the various characters, their various social classes, and how Christie disrupts those expectations to ultimately suggest that people shouldn't be judged by their position in society, their status, and judged by their actions. So that's the kind of formula that you need when kind of establishing your own thesis statement. Another example, in And Then There Were None, Christie explores the idea of confinement through the character of Vera to challenge the roles of women in 20th century Britain. Well, I have my title and my author, I have my theme, and I have my literary device. So, author title, what does the author do? She explores this theme or this idea of confinement. How does she do that? Well, she does that through the character of Vera. Why does she do that? Well, she does that to challenge the roles of women in 20th century Britain. You could also say that she explores this idea of confinement, or she challenges these roles through the character of Philip Lombard. It's all a matter of your interpretation. It's all a matter of your viewpoint and what you want to say. Another example, Christie disrupts gender roles through Vera's relationships with Hugo, Lombard, and Wargrave to argue that women are capable of more than society allows. So is this a good thesis statement? Well, what does Christie do? She disrupts gender roles, right? So I have my analysis verb and my kind of theme here. What does she do? She disrupts those gender roles. How? Vera's various male relationships, right? Because she has various different, she has relationships with each of these men, and each of them are different. But each of them kind of underestimate or overestimate her. And Wargrave, he definitely manipulates her in a way that kind of reveals who she is. Anyways, what does she do? She disrupts gender roles. How does she do that? Through Vera's various male relationships. Why does it matter? So what? Well, she's arguing that women are capable of more than whatever. Women are indeed these capable women, and they aren't given the credit that they deserve, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And some people might say that this is kind of an anti-feminist piece of literature, but I would say the opposite. I think that she is saying that women are capable and they are driven to doing terrible things because they aren't allowed to do that in society. So that's another example of how a thesis statement, or what a thesis statement for your paper is going to look like. So in a nutshell, your thesis statement for this paper is going to need to tell me the title and the author, what theme, what general idea, what general specific concept is the author exploring, or is the author, what is the author doing, and through what literary device, and why it matters. So you want to tell me what the author does, how the author does it, and why it matters. So what is the overall message or meaning made through these various components? So I have here some general tips for you to think about as you're coming up with your thesis statement and your literary analysis. I don't want you guys to marry yourselves too soon to a thesis. Instead, think about the literary element you want to explore. Are you doing a character analysis, a setting analysis? Are you looking at symbols, imagery, motif? Are you looking at whatever it is that you're looking for, whatever literary element, but even like point of view, um, because she does some interesting things with point of view and in kind of blurring the boundaries between truth and lie and all that kind of stuff through the various different points of view. But anyways, what literary element do you intend to explore? And once you figured out the literary element that you what you wanna focus your essay on, then you can consider the theme, or the point that you think that the author is making through that element. What is the author saying about a specific topic? Then, after you've kind of thought about these two things, you want to familiarize yourself with the text and choose pieces of evidence that prove your point about the theme. And this is so important because part of the major component of this essay is to use and integrate direct quotations from the text to prove or to analyze. I mean, that's the point of your analysis, really, is to choose pieces of evidence from the text. And keep in mind that if you have not read thoroughly this novel, you're in a bad spot because you can't just go on SparkNotes or Schmoop or whatever and choose the important quotes and try to integrate those into your essay, because it won't work. You want to really pick specific pieces of the text that go along with your analysis, and just kind of picking them out of nowhere is not really the way to do it. So if you haven't really gone through and done a close reading of at least some of the parts, I suggest that you really do that for this analysis, because I'm going to be I'm going to look pretty hard at that. So and if you can't find evidence, then you may want to go back to the drawing board with these kinds of concepts. So anyways, so consider the literary element, the theme, find your evidence by familiarizing yourself with the text, then develop this potential thesis statement, and work on your draft, and then do any possible revisions to the statement. So what I mean by that is it's easier sometimes to kind of change around your thesis statement than it is to rework your entire paper. So these are just some of the tips that I have, and I would be more than happy to help you guys figure out a thesis statement. I am the thesis whisperer, if you will. Please ask me for help or guidance, and as long as you come up with these kind of things, I can help guide you to developing that potential thesis statement. So please reach out to me. Let me know what you guys are thinking, and I think I may make an assignment for you guys to do a tentative thesis statement, so I can make sure that we're all on the right track. So let me know if you have any questions about what it is for a thesis statement for a literary analysis, and I'm super excited to see what you guys come up with for this paper.